My husband called me an obsolete phone while I was stuck in a sweater with one arm, then said, "Why would I even want to come home to this?" So I froze our accounts and played his insults at his cousin's dinner. I had only been out of the sling for 2 days, and my shoulders still screamed every time I tried to do something stupid, like pull a sweater over my head with one hand. I was halfway stuck in the thing, twisted and lopsided like a broken marionette, when Reed walked into the bedroom. He didn't offer to help. Instead, he stood in the doorway, sipping his protein shake like it was a glass of champagne, and smirked. "Wow," he said, his voice dipped in that casual cruelty he'd perfected over the years. "Watching you is like seeing someone try to download a 10-year-old app on a brand new phone." I froze. The wool itched against my cheek, my left arm still trapped halfway through the sleeve. Then he laughed. A short, sharp burst of sound that bounced off the walls and hit me harder than any of the painkillers ever could. "Actually," he added, "you're more like an obsolete phone with no updates. Can't even handle the basics anymore." I blinked at him, trying to process what he just said. Not because it was confusing, it wasn't, but because it hit exactly where it was supposed to. He saw my face then, how I must have looked, stunned, maybe hurt, and tilted his head like he was trying to read a foreign language he didn't care to learn. And then, as if that wasn't enough, he threw the final punch. "Why would I even want to come home to this?" I laughed. I don't know why. It wasn't real laughter. Just a reflex, a panicked little release of air that sounded like someone trying not to cry. "Well, sorry to disappoint," I said, finally wrestling the sweater down over my shoulder. I forced my lips into a tight smile and turned toward the closet like I was suddenly very busy organizing my flannel shirts. Behind me, Reed clicked his tongue. "I'm late for a call," he muttered, and disappeared into his office down the hall, the door shutting with a quiet finality. I sat down on the edge of the bed. My shoulder throbbed, but it wasn't the pain that stuck with me. It was that phrase, obsolete phone. I stared at the floor, socks mismatched and heart suddenly too loud in my ears. I thought about the last 10 years. The jokes Reed made at dinner parties, the little digs when I forgot something, the way he used to hold my hand in public and hadn't in months. Was this who we were now? I picked up my phone, stared at the blank screen for a while. No notifications. Just the time. 8:43 in the morning. And already, I felt like I was disappearing. That afternoon, the condo was quiet. Too quiet. Reed was holed up in his office as usual, probably on another call about market engagement or influencer strategies. Words I stopped pretending to understand a long time ago. I sat in the recliner by the window with my arm propped up on a pillow, the sunlight hitting my knees but doing nothing to warm me. 10 years of marriage. And I felt like a guest in my own home. I stared at the bookshelf across the room, wondering when we'd stop putting up new photos. Most of them were from years ago, trips we took before Reed got promoted, back when we still smiled at each other like we meant it. I could barely remember the last time we took a photo together. Maybe that wedding in Vermont? No, that was 3 years ago. Reed left early to take a client call, and I just accepted it. I leaned my head back and closed my eyes. It wasn't just the comment this morning. That was just the latest in a long list. Reed had changed. Or maybe I had. Or maybe we both had, and we'd just gotten so used to the shape of the space between us that we stopped noticing how wide it had grown. I thought about the way he used to greet me at the door, arms around my waist, calling me babe in that soft voice he reserved just for me. Lately, I was lucky if I got a distracted nod over his phone screen. And the digs, God, the digs. The jokes about how I never finished college. The way he introduced me to his coworkers like I was a pet project. "This is Gabriel, he works with his hands. Salt of the earth, this one." I let it slide every time. Because I loved him. Because we built a life together. Because I didn't want to be difficult. The doorbell rang. It was Lonnie, my little sister, carrying a grocery bag and her usual energy like it weighed nothing. "I brought you soup and those weird crackers you like," she said, brushing past me into the kitchen. "And don't lie. I know you haven't eaten anything but coffee and Advil today." I smiled in spite of myself. "Hey, Lon." She peeked her head around the fridge. "Why do you look like someone ran over your dog?" I hesitated, then sighed. "Reed said something stupid this morning." She stilled. "How stupid?" I rubbed my face with my good hand. "He said I was like an obsolete phone with no updates." Lonnie blinked, then put the crackers down and walked over to me slowly, like I was something fragile. "He said that." I nodded. She sat on the ottoman in front of me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "And then what?" I shrugged. Then he said, "Why would I even want to come home to this?" Silence stretched between us. Then Lonnie's jaw tightened. "That's not just a bad joke. That's emotional abuse." I flinched a little. "Come on, it's not." He was just frustrated. She leaned in. "Gabriel, what would you tell me if someone said that to me?" That stopped me cold. Because I knew exactly what I'd say. I'd tell her to leave. That she deserved better. That love shouldn't come with cruelty disguised as sarcasm. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Lonnie just squeezed my knee and said, "You don't have to keep living like this. The next morning, I downloaded a note-taking app on my phone. It felt weird, secretive, almost, but not wrong. Lonnie had left the night before with a long hug and a promise to check in more often. And when I asked her quietly, what should I do, she didn't say leave or stay. She just said, start writing it down. All of it. So I did. The app was basic, just timestamps and text boxes. I gave each note a title and started with the one from yesterday. Obsolete phone comment. May 2nd, 8:40 a.m. Follow-up. Why would I even want to come home to this? Even typing it out made my stomach tighten. But seeing it in writing, seeing his words stripped of tone and setting, it hit different. There was no way to excuse them when they stared back at me like that. That day, I paid attention more carefully. I kept the phone in my pocket, my thumb ready. Reed came home late, dropping a few designer shopping bags onto the entry bench like a reward for surviving the day. I swear, he said, kicking off his loafers, if I have to babysit that cripple in regional accounts one more week, I'm gonna lose it. I turned from the sink, where I was rinsing a mug. What did you just say? He looked up, blinked like he forgot I was there. Oh, come on. Not you, Gabe. Relax. It's just work stuff. Note, May 3rd, 6:12 p.m. Reed referred to coworker as that cripple. Laughed. No remorse. Dismissed me when I reacted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to Reed snore softly, the same way he used to when we spooned under cheap blankets in our first apartment. Back then, everything about him had felt warm. Now he just radiated entitlement. At some point, I got up and wandered to the kitchen for water. As I passed his office, I heard him talking on the phone. Laughing. No, he's still here. Yeah. Shoulders all messed up. Basically useless around the house. Charity case I sleep next to. My hand tightened around the glass. He didn't even whisper. Note, May 3rd, 11:41 p.m. Read on phone. Charity case I sleep next to. Talking about me. I stood there in the dark kitchen, numb. The water sat untouched on the counter. By morning, something had shifted in me. I didn't tell him I overheard. I didn't slam doors or start fights. I made eggs like usual, poured his coffee. He barely looked up from his phone. And while he scrolled Instagram, I scrolled something else, our joint savings account. It didn't take long to notice the weird activity. Small, regular transfers. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would raise flags. But they were all going to the same account I didn't recognize. Labeled simply, C.Reserve. I clicked through a few banking apps, checked our history. The joint savings, the emergency fund, even a tax return deposit from last year, we were missing thousands. Then I found it. A crypto wallet tied to a new Coinbase account under his name alone. Note, May 4th, 9:17 a.m. Reed has been secretly transferring funds from joint accounts into personal crypto wallet. Approximate $7,800 so far. I sat back in the chair, the phone resting in my lap. This wasn't just hurtful anymore. It was betrayal. And it was measurable. I made another note, this time with no timestamp. Start consulting someone about legal protections. This is not just emotional anymore. This is financial. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel crazy. I felt prepared. It started small. I stopped ordering groceries. That was the first thing. Reed liked the kitchen stock just so, oat milk, imported jam, his protein powder in exactly the right flavor. Usually I handled all of it through our shared delivery app. It was one of those invisible chores, the kind you do without thinking. But that Monday morning, I deleted the app from my phone. By Wednesday, he was standing in front of the fridge with his arms spread, eyebrows raised. Where the hell is the almond yogurt? I didn't look up from the couch. Guess we ran out. You didn't reorder? Nope. He waited. Maybe he thought I'd jump up, apologize, pull out a hidden stash. But I just kept reading. By the weekend, the pharmacy called. His prescription for cholesterol was ready. I usually picked it up, but I let the voicemail sit there untouched. I didn't refill the Brita. I didn't pay the water bill, which he never bothered to check. I didn't even schedule the house cleaner, who usually came every other Friday. The house didn't fall apart. Not right away. But Reed did. He started noticing things. The empty paper towel roll. The dying plant on the balcony. The fact that he had to text me to ask when trash day was. He got irritable, snippy. This place is a mess, he muttered one morning, shoving empty Amazon boxes aside with his foot. I guess obsolete phones can't do much, huh? I said, without even turning around. He froze. What did you say? I looked at him then. Really looked. He was still in his tailored joggers, AirPods in, half-dressed for a Zoom meeting that probably didn't start for another 20 minutes. I smiled. Just quoting you. His mouth opened, then shut. He wasn't used to hearing his own words back. He recovered fast, of course. Well, so you're being petty now? No, I said, standing slowly. I'm just living up to the image you painted of me. Wouldn't want to disappoint. He scoffed and walked away, but his posture was off. There was a twitch in his jaw he couldn't quite hide. The next few days were tense. Reed kept acting like things were normal, kiss on the cheek, text messages with dinner suggestions, but I didn't play along. I didn't answer questions he could Google. I didn't fix anything that broke. I didn't remind him when his mother's birthday came up. That one especially stung him. He missed her call. She left a rambling voicemail filled with guilt and disappointment. Reed blamed me, of course. You used to help with this stuff, he snapped. I looked up from my phone. I used to do a lot of things. He didn't have a response to that. Because for the first time, Reed was being forced to see the labor I did every day, not the kind that got paychecks or praise, but the kind that made our lives function. The quiet stuff. The glue. And now that it was gone, the cracks were showing. He just didn't realize yet how wide they'd become. The final picture came into focus one rainy Thursday afternoon. Reed had left his laptop open in the living room while he took a call on the balcony. I wasn't snooping, not really, just moving his glass out of the way when the screen came alive. Email inbox. Subject line, trip confirmation, Lake Como Resort and Spa. Date, last month. The same week he said he was flying to Phoenix for a team-building summit. I clicked. There it was. A 3-night stay in a luxury suite. For 2. No mention of any company expense or retreat agenda. Just a note under special accommodations romantic package, champagne on arrival. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. That was the part that scared me most. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. The one I'd filled with every comment, every dig, every quiet betrayal. May 15th, 2:36 p.m., confirmed Reed lied about Phoenix work trip. Found resort reservation. 2 guests. Romantic package. It felt cold, typing it like that. But it helped. It reminded me that this wasn't about emotions. It was about documentation. Protection. That night, I texted Rachel, an old friend from high school who now worked as a paralegal at a firm downtown. I didn't go into detail, just asked if she had time to talk. She replied instantly. Come by tomorrow morning. Bring everything. I stayed up past midnight organizing screenshots, transaction logs, credit card statements. I traced Reed's crypto withdrawals and flagged the ones that lined up with the timing of that retreat. I even found a Venmo transfer labeled for Italy sent to a name I didn't recognize. When I met Rachel at her office the next day, I handed her a folder like it was evidence in a trial. Because it was. She flipped through it slowly, eyes sharp. You weren't exaggerating, she said. This is bad. I didn't say anything. She looked up. You want to fight back? I want to be free, I said quietly. But I don't want to lose everything doing it. Rachel nodded. Then we're going to prepare. You'll need to protect your pension, redirect any direct deposits to a separate account, and document every penny you can. I left her office lighter than I'd felt in months. That weekend, I opened a new bank account in my name only and had my pension income rerouted. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I started moving small essentials out of the condo and into a rented storage unit across town. Documents, keepsakes, the photo albums Reed never cared about. By the time Reed noticed, it was too late. He walked in one night, dropping his coat on the bench with a frustrated huff. Why's the Chase card frozen? I looked up from my book. Because I shut it down. His face twisted. What the hell for? To protect what's mine, I said calmly. There was a beat of silence. The kind that used to scare me. Not anymore. He let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. Jesus, you're actually serious. I didn't answer. He started pacing. This is about that stupid phone comment, isn't it? You're still hung up on that. I stood. No, Reed. This is about everything. The money, the lies, the disrespect, and the fact that you stopped treating me like a partner a long time ago. He scoffed again, but he didn't argue. Later that week, my therapist, who I'd finally called after putting it off for too long, looked me in the eye and said, You're doing the right thing, but you need to be ready. Ready for what? I asked. For the backlash, she said. Because you've stopped playing your role, and he's going to feel that. She was right. But for once, I felt like I could handle it. Reed's cousin Emily hosted the kind of dinners that made your stomach tense before you even got there. Linen napkins, low music, overpriced wine you were expected to compliment. She'd invited both of us, as usual. But this time, I showed up alone. I wore a clean shirt, and the jacket Lonnie said made me look unbothered and potentially rich. My shoulders still ached when I moved too fast, but I was done hiding that. I walked in holding a small dessert tin like a polite guest. Reed hadn't even noticed I left before him. Emily's house was already buzzing. Reed's family had that curated warmth they turned on for guests and photos. Reed arrived 10 minutes later, all smiles and cologne, kissing cheeks and pretending nothing was wrong. Hey, he said when he reached me. Glad you came. You look good. He leaned in for a kiss. I turned my face slightly, so he got my cheek. He didn't flinch, just smiled tighter. We can talk later. Sure, I said, my voice even. The dinner went exactly how you'd expect. Everyone talked about work, trips, and someone's dog's anxiety medication. Reed sat beside me, playing the attentive husband, resting his hand on my leg, refilling my glass, making jokes like we were still us. I waited. Dessert came, a lemon tart and some bakery cookies. The room was warm with sugar and wine, and just enough family tension to keep people polite. That's when I pulled out my phone. Before everyone digs in, I said, standing slowly, I'd like to share something. Reed looked up from his tart, confused. What are you doing? I ignored him and hit play. The audio was clear. Reed's voice, sharp and casual. Charity case I sleep next to. Then, a beat later, laughter. His silence fell over the table. I let the full clip play, 37 seconds. Not long, but long enough. Reed's cousin Emily stared at him, jaw slightly slack. Her husband's hand froze midair with a forkful of pie. His aunt covered her mouth. Reed shot to his feet. This is wildly inappropriate. I looked at him, finally. You said it. I just brought the receipts. Gabriel, he hissed, lowering his voice like he could still contain it. What the hell are you trying to do? Tell the truth. I was venting. That was a private. On speakerphone. In our kitchen. With me 3 feet away. Reed's mouth opened, then shut. Emily looked like she was going to be sick. You talked about him like that? Reed started pacing. You don't understand our dynamic. We joke. No, I cut in. You joke. I've been surviving. No one else spoke. No one defended him. And Reed? He wasn't the charming executive anymore. He was a man caught, squirming, unraveling in real time. I sat back down and took a bite of my lemon tart. Anyway, I said calmly, I'm not here to make a scene. I just wanted to stop pretending. And for the first time in years, the silence in that room was on my side. Mediation was held in a plain office building with flickering lights and a bowl of peppermints no one touched. It didn't feel like the end of a marriage. It felt like DMV purgatory. Reed walked in with a lawyer who looked like he charged by the syllable. Charcoal suit, expensive briefcase, sharp smile. I could practically hear the word aggressive in his cologne. I came with Rachel. She wore jeans, a blazer, and that calm, flat expression I had seen her use in high school debates, just before she wrecked someone with receipts and logic. She didn't bring drama. She brought documentation. Let's begin, the mediator said, gesturing for us to sit. Reed didn't look at me. His lawyer started right away, pushing a folder across the table. Our client is requesting a 50-50 division of all joint assets, plus a monthly alimony payment due to loss of marital lifestyle. Considering Gabriel has a pension. Rachel didn't blink. We'll be declining that. The lawyer raised an eyebrow. I'm sorry. Rachel opened her own folder. Tidy. Color-coded. Deadly. Here's a compiled record of emotional abuse, as documented by voice recordings, timestamps, and first-hand accounts, she said, sliding papers across the table, including specific statements made by Mr. Doran, which we are prepared to submit as evidence of psychological harm. She slid another page forward. And here are bank records showing Mr. Doran's unauthorized transfers from joint accounts into a private crypto wallet, without the consent or knowledge of my client. Reed's face twitched. Just slightly. Rachel's voice stayed smooth. We're willing to settle today with the following conditions: no alimony. Each party keeps personal retirement accounts. Gabriel retains his pension income. Mr. Doran assumes full responsibility for the outstanding credit debt, including any crypto-related losses. The room went still. Reed shifted in his chair. That's ridiculous. Rachel leaned back, folding her hands. It's generous. We could pursue much worse in court. His lawyer whispered something to him, fast and low. Reed shook his head. You think I'm going to walk away with nothing? After 10 years. Rachel didn't answer. I looked him in the eye for the first time since the family dinner. You're not walking away with nothing, Reed, I said. You're walking away with what's yours. Just yours. The difference is, this time, you don't get to take what's mine too. His lawyer let out a breath. We'll need a moment. 10 minutes passed. Then they came back and agreed to the deal. No alimony. No spousal support. Full debt responsibility on Reed's side. The mediator looked relieved. It was over. As Reed gathered his things, he paused. For a second, I thought he might say something. Some last dig, some weak apology. He didn't. He just left. Rachel turned to me and smiled for the first time that day. You did it. I nodded. Not because I felt victorious, but because I finally felt unchained. The studio apartment was small but bright. No stairs. No shared walls with someone who muttered insults in their sleep. Just a corner for my books, a second-hand recliner that didn't hurt my shoulder, and a tiny kitchen that only made meals for one. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that used to scare me. Now it felt like peace. Every morning, I walked to the community center 3 blocks away and did slow laps in their heated pool. The first time, I could barely lift my left arm above the water. I floated on my back and let the ceiling blur above me. 2 weeks later, I could swim again. My doctor called it measurable progress. I called it getting my body back. One afternoon, I stopped by the grocery store on the way home. Just eggs, bread, coffee, nothing fancy. I was standing in the produce aisle, comparing bags of spring mix, when I heard my name. Gabriel. I turned, and there he was. Reed. His hair was longer. He looked thinner. Same designer coat, but it hung off him differently now, like it had lost its structure. Like he had. Wow, he said, blinking. You look good. I didn't say anything. He cleared his throat. I've been going to therapy, trying to unpack things. I know I said awful stuff. Did awful stuff. He paused. Waited. I nodded. Hope therapy's helping. He opened his mouth again, maybe to say more, maybe to ask for something. But I'd already turned away. Back in my apartment, I set the groceries down and flipped on the TV. A commercial was playing, some flashy ad for a new phone model. The voiceover boomed. You're not outdated. You're just due for a real upgrade. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh. Not a dry, exhausted one. A real laugh. Because 5 months ago, that line would have made my stomach twist. I would have remembered Reed's voice saying obsolete phone and felt that same flash of shame. But now I just thought, how ridiculous. I was never a broken device. I was a whole person who gave everything, quietly, steadily, every single day, until I had nothing left. And then I gave to myself. Later that week, I went to my first meeting of the local LGBTQ+ book club. Lonnie had dared me to go. You need friends who like novels and tea, she said, poking my arm. Not just therapists and pharmacists. I didn't know what to expect, but the people there were warm, a little nerdy, and surprisingly blunt in the best way. I told them I was new to this, new to reading for pleasure, new to choosing myself, new to feeling okay. They nodded like it made perfect sense. By the second meeting, I'd volunteered to host the next one. I cleaned the apartment, made lemon bars from a box, and found an old playlist I used to love. That night, someone complimented my music taste. Someone else asked me if I was seeing anyone. I just smiled and said, not yet. And it wasn't sad or lonely. It was full of possibility. As I stood at my window later, watching the traffic blink below, I thought about how long I'd lived under someone else's idea of who I was allowed to be. Now, I was building my own story, one chapter at a time.